Welcome into Locked On Knicks. Alex Wolfe and Gavin Schall here, and a little bit of a Christmas hangover for the Knicks. They lose 129 to 120 to the Oklahoma City Thunder in the turnover battle and the fast break battle. And all in all, just a really scary young team kind of swung this one Oklahoma City's way. We're going to talk about it next on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, welcome in to Locked On Knicks. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code all lowercase LockedOnNBA, LOCKEDONNBA, for a first deposit match up to $100. And we want to thank you guys for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day, whether you're checking us out on your favorite podcast platform or taking in the sights and sounds on YouTube. We appreciate you making us a part of your daily routine. Make sure you hit that auto download button on your favorite podcast app or the notification bell on YouTube so you never miss an episode, because we are here for you guys 5 times a week. Typically, this week was a holiday week, so it might only be 4, but typically 5 times a week. I find that too many other places. I'm Alex Wolfe. I'm editor-in-chief of Knicks site The Strickland, which you can find at thestrick.land. And he is Gavin Schall, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster. And your New York Knicks lost this game 129 to 120 to the Oklahoma City Thunder, starting a new road trip. Feels like the other one just ended, Gavin. But Knicks back on the road again. Just can't wait to get all that. Just can't wait to get home again. They're going to have a lot more home games in the second half of the season, which will be nice. But Gavin, I thought this was a pretty tough one. This was a pretty tough matchup for the Knicks. This Thunder team is not particularly long, and they actually play quite small. But this is a team that could just shoot the lights out, and they really did that against the Knicks, on top of the fact that they just have a ton of athletes and a ton of tough shot makers. And somehow their average age is only like 22 years old. I don't understand how this team exists and is so good at this particular stage, but they're kind of all taking a leap at once, and they kind of just took a leap right over the Knicks in this game by and large.
Yeah, look, they're absurdly talented. Top 10 offense, top 10 defense. Their metrics I haven't looked in a while. They might even be better than that. 20-9. I think that's about the 4th best record in basketball, maybe the 3rd best record in basketball right now. Like they're legit. Like we have enough of a sample size to say, if you don't want to go so far as to consider them legitimate NBA championship contenders, given that I'm pretty sure no one other than Davis Bertans on their team has won a playoff series in their career. Like I'm open to hearing that. But they are really freaking good. And the Knicks bore the brunt of it in a game where they were dominated in the turnover battle. That is the number that was emphasized in the broadcast all night, the number that stood out to me all night. The Knicks had 18 of them. Oklahoma City had 4. That's the game right there. Like I think it's almost as simple as that. Like you could look at the fact that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jalen Williams absolutely cooked them for a combined 72 points, and we can get into that as much as you want. But despite it, the Knicks offense is playing so well right now, Alex, they still would have had a chance to win, but hard to survive when Jalen Brunson, in a fairly sloppy game by his standards, has 5 turnovers. RJ Barrett has 5 turnovers, including a truly back-breaking play. That was the same exact one when they had the 4-on-1 fast break against the Bucks, where he just blindly runs into someone on a fast break. You can't be doing that, RJ. Julius Randle sloppy in the first half, cleaned it up a bit in the second half, but had moments of real laziness, including one that kind of was the dagger for OKC, where he was arguing call, didn't get back on defense. Jalen Williams, in turn, hit a wide open 3 to give the Thunder a 116 to 106 lead that they would never relinquish. The Knicks had moments of real valiance. That's not a word. They were very valiant in this game at points. They tied it up at 81 after trailing by 17 in the first half. They fought, they clawed. IQ was awesome. Hart was awesome. But Alex, again, hard to overcome that big of a turnover differential on the road against one of the best teams in the NBA. At the end of the day, it's as simple as that.
Yeah, I really got it. I mean, we should probably get into the Knicks specific talk a little more soon, but I got a shout out too, man. The big 3 that OKC is trotting out there right now of SGA, Holmgren, and Jalen Williams is really scary, man.
Yeah.
Like Jalen Williams, when I was watching him play, I was like, this is like if like at least the way he played in this game, I understand, he's still young, so he's still working things out. But the way that he was able to play in this game, I was like, wow, this is pretty much if you took Jalen Brunson, made him a few years younger and much larger of a human being.
And he could have been a Knick, Alex.
And he could have been a Knick if they had not made those moves last year, but let's not.
And they probably wouldn't have taken him. We should.
Supposedly they were kind of interested in him, though. That's the part
okay.
that's kind of
forgot about that.
Yeah, there was interest there, but they have apparently not enough interest to actually pull the trigger there. So yeah, the tough stuff. Walt Perrin is shaking his fist at the sky after this game. But yeah, he was crazy. SGA is just a nonsensically good basketball player. And Chet Holmgren, man, for as much has been made about Wemby this year, like Chet Holmgren is a real spectacle to watch too. He's just like a little bit shorter. So he's only like normal 7-footer proportions, but I mean, his handle is fantastic. He's just, oh man, this OKC, I'm quite jealous. It's a very, very talented team. And this is considering they didn't even play like some of their other, like Ousmane Dieng, I believe, is injured for them right now, or is he just straight up not playing with them?
I don't know. He was in the rotation, so I assume he's hurt. But
yeah, either way, I mean, that's another guy that they invested a good pick in, and all of a sudden, like, crazy team there. Anyway, yeah, I agree with you with the Knicks. Like, it came down to the turnovers. Like the early part of the game, Randle only finished with 3 turnovers on the books, but I thought that he was focusing a little too hard on this looked on paper like a matchup that he should have been able to dominate and like get inside and really assert his will. But he did do more of that in the second half, which I appreciated. But in the first half, he seemed a little too concerned with getting his own shots up, and that led to like double teams, triple teams. That was leading to kind of sloppy possessions because he was just holding on to it for too long, trying to figure out what to do. And OKC was crashing. And even if they're not the tallest, longest team, they're very fast and they have like they clearly target wingspans and stuff because they can get hands all over the place, poke the ball out. I mean, RJ Barrett turned it over 5 times as well. Jalen Brunson turned it over 5 times. It's not a recipe for success if you're having that many balls poked away from you, and you're not doing it to the other team either, which OKC, to their credit, played an extremely crisp game on the other end and just had a formula to beat the Knicks, basically, which was get inside, kick it out, swing, swing, swing. Every single player on this team can shoot a 3, so they're screwed. And that was it. And that was kind of the story of the game ultimately. But it was a tough one for the Knicks, but a really bad matchup. Sort of like that we say that the Toronto Raptors are always sort of a bad matchup for the Knicks because they're super lengthy and, can bother them on the inside and stuff like that. This Thunder team, I think, was a bad matchup for the Knicks because the Knicks like to slow it down a decent amount. And those times when they did slow it down, OKC just swarmed them and they were too fast and too handsy for the Knicks to overcome.
Yeah, they basically made a bet that they were going to go small when Chet was off the floor, and Julius and Hardenstein couldn't hurt them enough to make them pay for that. And ultimately, they won that bet. And essentially, what they're prioritizing and doing that is saying we are always going to have a wide open paint for whether it was Jalen Williams or whether it was Shai Gilgeous-Alexander to go and attack. And if the paint's wide open and you don't have great perimeter defenders, which the Knicks just don't, like those guys are going to end up with something like 36 points. And I know it was a career high for Jalen Williams, but it tells you, and we're going to get into this a little bit more in the third segment when we talk about if the Knicks are going to need some lineup changes, whether or not this is a fatal flaw for the Knicks against great teams and particularly great offenses. Spoiler alert, I think it is, because they just have no chance guarding one-on-one in the perimeter if they can't station a shot blocker right at the rim. When Chet's out there, obviously you have to respect him. When Chet wasn't out there, they literally just went like 5 wide. They were playing Kenrich Williams, who's, what is he, like 6'6", 6'7"? Like Jalen Brunson was posting up at one point. It didn't look like there was a huge height difference there. And in the first half, they did such a good job sending doubles at Julius Randle. It's been the formula since the Hawks series. And Julius at times made really good decisions. Like I wrote down in my notes, like first 2 times he was double teams, he made smart, quick passes. I think both of them either led to buckets or free throws or open shots for the Knicks. And then he had a few turnovers in a row. In the second half, for the most part, he was better. And the Knicks offense, look, they scored 120 points in this game. That really wasn't the issue. It was just what Mark Daigneault essentially gambled on, was that the Knicks would just have zero chance at stopping the Thunder on the other end, and the Knicks would stop themselves enough that it just wouldn't matter. And when you have 18 turnovers, that is exactly what happen. Alex, I want to get into a little bit more on Julius Randle. Some great stuff, I thought, from Immanuel Quickley and Josh Hart in terms of carrying the Knicks back into this game. But first, I need to know how to get some parts for my car, man. Where do I go?
Yeah, well, luckily our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Basketball host Josh Lloyd to bring you some of the best fantasy picks of the week all season long. So if you want auto parts or you want great fantasy advice, eBay Motors has got you covered both ways. Whether you're prepping for a daily draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So let's see who Josh has picked out for us on this week's eBay Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. And I'm going to pick a guy that in my fantasy league, I feel like a genius for grabbing him off the waiver wire and playing in a 10-team, 9-cat league. And I feel like I've been doing a good job of sort of churning my IL spots this year, picking up guys to stash and, bring back later. I did that with Wendell Carter. Been a little bit of a mixed result so far, but just picked up Jalen Johnson, and that paid dividends right away when he first came back. And Josh has to say, if Jalen Johnson was dropped in your league, make sure you grab him now as he's returning from injury. And his first game back, he almost put up a double-double, almost had like 10, 10, and 5, plus I think a steal or two. So he's going to fill up those stat categories for you. As much as I dislike Atlanta and the Hawks, Jalen Johnson was a great pickup for them in the draft last year, 2 years ago, whenever that was. And he's finally starting to pay dividends. So Josh Lloyd from Locked On Fantasy Basketball is going to help you win your fantasy championship. And eBay Motors knows the championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. That's the same with your vehicle. So if you've ever tried to get parts for your car, it can be sort of frustrating sometimes, whether you have to go into a store or just be hitting Google like crazy, and you're at like Walmart, which isn't really an auto parts store, and you're like, oh, how good is this part going to be? And it makes life a little difficult as far as trying to do things on your own for your car. But that's where eBay's Guaranteed Fit comes in, and their website is super helpful as far as trying to find parts for your car. I love it. I've done it. I've bought a couple parts when I had my Subaru Forester. I was buying parts for that. Now I drive a Toyota Prius because I got a long commute, so I got to save on that gas mileage. And I've bought a couple vanity parts for that off eBay Motors, and everything is fit perfectly thanks to the Guaranteed Fit. So with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof racks, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. All right, Gavin, we're back in. Continuing to talk through this game. Again, 129 to 120. I honestly feel like the final score betrays just how not close this game was down the stretch. Like the Knicks did manage to tie it, like you said, 81-81, but things really fell apart down the stretch of this one. And maybe the guy to focus in on with that is Julius Randle. On paper, had a pretty solid game, right? Like 25 points, 9 boards, 2 assists, 3 turnovers, which, again, is not that high, although it felt like it was more. I mean, you and I, when we were like getting ready to record, we were like, you only had 3? Like it felt like more, just based off how things went. But as you mentioned, especially in the second half, he seemed to switch into ref complaining mode. Maybe it's just being up against a younger team like that. You figure like, well, I'm going to get lots of calls this game. And he certainly he shot 13 free throws in this game. So it's not like he got no calls. He was earning them. He was getting inside, particularly in the second half. I thought he did a better job of reading the doubles and triples a little better too, and getting the ball moving when he had to, but also did zero in a little too hard on just trying to get in to the hoop once or twice. And I don't know. I thought it was a very mixed bag effort from him, but what was your sort of takeaway as far as Julius is concerned in this one?
I guess the same thing. It was kind of what I was getting at last segment, where he just wasn't quite decisive enough in the first half, and I think it's sometimes easy to put that all on Julius. Like the cutting has to be there when he's double teamed. Like guys have to make themselves available, and it's not just on Julius to make a brilliant read every single time. So it's multifaceted. But I just saw it like as well as he played offensively, like there's some meat left on the bone just because they were so small. And I think Julius has the ability to pretty much single-handedly force teams out of that. And it feels a little bit more awkward than it should feel in year 5 of him here. And again, that's not totally on Julius. I just sort of think it's the roster, but I also think it's on Tibbs and just getting to the right lineups around him. Like I really liked in the second quarter when it was IQ, Grimes, Hart, Randle, and Ihart, because I think that's a group that can have a lot of success around Randle because you're pairing him with guys who are good cutters, who can make quick decisions, for the most part can hit threes. And it's a little bit harder when the starters are out there, and RJ's kind of a non-shooter to do that. And Oklahoma City over and over and over again, when they were having those double teams, like they were helping off of RJ Barrett and they were leaving RJ Barrett open. And RJ, who played, like, if I can transition into him a little bit, like an awesome second quarter in this game. Like blew me away what he was doing offensively. It's like the sheer force he was playing with, like the one play where he had the inside spin move into the hezzy to draw the foul. Like he was just like aggressive in a way that you rarely see from him, play after play after play. And he was making great decisions off it, really good passes. And then the second half, that just sort of went away. And it's kind of been the story of RJ these last 2 games. And for honestly, like since he came back from the injury, where he's not putting complete games together, Alex, and he's having great quarters, and sometimes great halves, but it's almost never a great, like, complete game for him. And you have to include in his grade on the night the fact that, again, Jalen Williams went off for a career high. And as I noted before, that isn't all on RJ Barrett, right? Like there are different plays where there are different guys matched up with him. And it's the fact that you don't have Mitchell Robinson in terms of rim protection. It's the fact that with how Oklahoma City is playing, you don't even have a center at the rim most times, and that makes it really hard to guard. But Jalen Williams cooked him 13 of 17, 5 of 5 from 3. And again, just not enough from Barrett in the second half of this game.
Yeah, I was gonna compliment RJ's second quarter too. I mean, that was like, it was reminiscent of how he played in the first quarter the other day against Milwaukee, where he was just giving them everything they needed, was getting to the basket, was finishing through contact. He had like one sort of ugly miss on like what was kind of a bunny around the rim, but other than that, but Hartenstein had a really nice little tap in off of that. But other than that, I mean, I thought that he was manipulating the defense well. He was getting in, he was drawing some contact, even if he wasn't getting a call every single time. But things were looking kind of up. And I was like, especially after the first quarter, he looked terrible. I was like, okay, maybe this is just one of those games where he kind of turns it on the second half. Like that was the staple last year, most of the time, was second half RJ. Like you get in that third quarter, fourth quarter, and that's when the magic happens with him. And instead, it just didn't. I mean, he just didn't have it again, which is really disappointing to see that he shot, I think it was 4 of 10 his previous 2 games, which, say whatever you will about the first of the 2 Milwaukee games, but at least, even if it was garbage time, at least some threes finally started falling and he was up to like 40% again. And then to come back and hit 1 of 7 in this game and just look back to just like he's overthinking it again. I don't know what it is with his 3-point shot this year, that it's gone from absolutely nuclear for the first like 15 games of the season before the migraines to now just like, it looks like he's completely overthought it all over again. But yeah, I wasn't in love with how he played in the second half. I did think, part of the Jalen Williams thing, it's tough to put it all on RJ because, it was a tough matchup. Like that guy clearly was just going to have a career night, but there were some times where, maybe if you stuck a little closer to him, he wouldn't have gone 5 of 5 from 3, which would have been helpful. Or maybe if you would have been more prepared for the lean in on you, which I understand Jalen Williams has like bulked up a lot. Like he is a very, very strong looking guy, but RJ's no slouch in that department either. So, being more prepared to take that kind of space clearing shoulder and contesting those mid-range shots a little more, like Williams really ate in the mid-range too. I think maybe a little more could have been done in that regard. So yeah, it was not my favorite RJ game either. And both he and Randle, it was like, I mean, Randle, I think you can maybe excuse it a little more because at least the final stats looked a little better, at the end, even if there were some moments that don't get on the stat sheet that kind of doom the Knicks on a few different possessions. But RJ, it's like the eye test and the stat sheet both didn't really line up. So kind of just got to see better out of both those guys in a game like this.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement. And 2 guys who I would say almost on like what was, I don't even know how much we want to talk about because I don't have a ton to say about him, but relatively nondescript night for Jalen Brunson outside of a couple of great plays and a couple of really bad turnovers. Like Immanuel Quickley and Josh Hart were pretty clearly the Knicks' two best players in this one. I want to get into that next. But first, Alex, I want to tell everyone about our buddies over at Prize Picks. So you might be at home asking, what is Prize Picks? Well, you're in luck because I am about to tell you Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports DFS platform in North America. We're the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks. You pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each and every week. Prize Picks, and this is maybe my favorite feature, Alex. They offer a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. So that means for football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. This is so incredibly rare. In fact, Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. Trust me, you will feel good having that in your back pocket. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Once again, that's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use our code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, so we a lot of negative in the first part. I think if we want to go positive, the remarkable part of this game is that it was a career night for Jalen Williams. It was we've been using this word a lot lately, but again, it's applicable. Like a typically virtuoso performance for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. 36 points in 36 minutes, eight assists, 7 rebounds, 2 steals, 2 blocks. I know in the modern NBA we take crazy stat lines for granted, and clearly like numbers are juiced. Maybe in like 10 years ago, that's more like a 28, 5 and 5. He was totally unstoppable. He's an absolutely sick player. I don't even think the Knicks defended him particularly poorly. It is just really, really hard to keep him away from the line. His absurd touch. He's a monster. Chet Holmgren, 22 points, 5 rebounds, ridiculous rim protection, 4 blocks, altered a bunch of other ones. I honestly thought Hartenstein played good defense on him. It didn't matter. Why am I reiterating once again how good the Thunder are? Well, while people groan and listen, it's because with that turnover differential, with those guys going off, the Knicks were in this game in the fourth quarter, and it was pretty much single-handedly because of Immanuel Quickley and Josh Hart. You have to start with Quickley. 25 minutes, 22 points. I mean, let's just go over the game log for a second with Immanuel Quickley, what he's been doing recently. Had 20 points in 29 minutes against the Lakers, had 19 in 24 minutes against the Nets, sucked the first Bucks game, and then came back 20 points in 22 minutes, and then 22 and 25 tonight. I mean, he's been on a nearly point per minute track 4 of the last 5 games for the Knicks, and tonight it was another shining example of that. Stretch in the fourth quarter, we hit a huge 3, like blew by a closeout, like with that ended in like a stumbling assist to Isaiah Hartenstein, then took advantage of a Josh Hart offensive rebound to beat his guy, hit a floater. He's just so unbalanced right now, Alex. I think at times when you see him searching for his shot, he starts kind of leaning into it and almost just like trying to catch a rhythm and almost shoot it as if he were on a heater and kind of trick his brain into that. Like right now, like he's just stable, he's calm, he's confident. He's getting more minutes next to Jalen Brunson, which I think gets him into a rhythm because he's getting open threes instead of having to create everything himself. But even in the fourth quarter, when he was on the floor, like it's not as easy as it looks for Brunson, where Brunson can catch the ball and just in 2 seconds be right at the rim and be finishing with IQ. It's really meticulous. And at times I thought he was holding the ball too long, but the Knicks kept getting good shots out of it, whether it was for him or for someone else on the team. Like he had a really, really nice showing this fourth quarter. And I kind of hope the Knicks start him going forward. I know, hot take from me. I've been saying it all offseason. I've been saying it for years at different times, but he's just, again, very clearly one of your 3 best players. And honestly, I don't think they can afford to go without his defense against the best teams in the league.
Yeah, it's really funny because as you were getting to the end of singing his praises for this game, which I fully agree with all of it. I mean, I think he looks like one of the most confident in himself guys on this team right now, outside of like Jalen Brunson and maybe Julius Randle to a fault. But like, I mean,
Yeah.
I think IQ is just playing as good a basketball as he's ever played right now, and yet is getting fewer minutes than he was getting this time last year, which is kind of bizarre to me. Like Breen even pointed out on the broadcast, like Quickly's averaging 5 less minutes per game this year than last year. That is insane. Like the fact that a guy on the third year of his rookie deal was the runner up for sixth man of the year and probably should have won it, and then comes in the next year and gets less playing time. It just doesn't really compute with me. And so I'm with you. I think, this is a good opportunity to sort of jump into our final discussion that we want to have here on the show of like, is it time to maybe consider a lineup change? I think it is. And I think you got to find a way to get Quickly in that starting lineup. And like, that might make Tibbs a little uncomfortable. And it might, go against his sensibilities of having like his little 1-for-1 match for every single player on the court, where he always wants to have like, oh, well, for Brunson, you have Quickley. That's like a 1-to-1 match. So that way you could bring Quickley off the bench and maybe you play some minutes with them together. But like, no matter what, one of those guys should be on the floor at all times. I don't know if he understands that if he starts both of them, that can still happen. That you could still just time it out in a way that one of them is on the floor at any given time, and that they just start and close halves together. And then in the middle, you sort of, say, okay, Quickly, you're going to play the whole first quarter. Brunson, you'll be one of our first subs. When Quickly goes out early second quarter or at the end of the first quarter, then Brunson comes back in, so on and so forth. This doesn't seem like rocket science to me. I don't totally understand why it would be completely untenable to play those two together, but I think you have to. I mean, I think you're not just leaving defense on the table and you're not just leaving scoring on the table, you're leaving both. Like he's clearly been one of the most impactful players, if not at least from an advanced metrics perspective, every single one of them says he's the most impactful player on the Knicks right now, pretty much. Like, I don't know how you're not finding more minutes for this guy. I don't know how you're not starting him. It just seems like antithetical to progress to be continually like keeping this guy's minutes capped at like 20 to 25 minutes per game when there's some of the best 20 to 25 minutes you're getting out of any given player. Like for example, only 2 players in this game ended with a positive plus minus. Grimes was a neutral in 11 minutes at 0, but Quickley was a +2. Hartenstein was a +4. That's it. Like those are your only 2 guys that were a positive in this game in the plus minus category, which is a broken stat a little bit to some degree. It's not perfect, but I feel like pretty well encapsulates the impact that both guys had in this game. So yeah,
Can I
go
throw something out there real quick, Alex? So my proposed lineup here would be Brunson, Quickley, Hart, Randle, Isaiah Hartenstein. 5th most used Knicks lineup this season. They played 176 possessions this year compared to the current starting lineup. Still, they played a little bit more than the current starting lineup. The current starting lineup this year, which is Brunson, DiVincenzo, Barrett, Randle, Isaiah Hartenstein, point differential of -0.5 per 100 possessions, which is not bad, right? It's not good. It's like a 38th percentile lineup in the NBA. My proposed starting lineup, which has played a little bit more, plus 33.5 points per 100 possessions. That is a 97th percentile lineup in the NBA. They score absurdly well. They defend exceptionally well. And this isn't new. Last year, I said it, like the lineups with Brunson and Quickley played some of the best offense in basketball and played fantastic, like top 5 level defense. And that continued into the playoffs, even though it flipped in terms of whether they were great on offense or defense. My point is, like, we have a large sample size now of Quickley and Brunson. Not only works, it dominates. And yet Tom Thibodeau just refuses to go to it because it feels uncomfortable with him. And no, he does not refuse to go to it down the stretch. And I hear him when he says it doesn't matter who starts, it matters who finishes. I'm going to throw a crazy thing out there, Alex. I think both things matter a lot. And I think the Knicks can compete better against the best teams in the league with Immanuel Quickley on the floor. And I think on some level, Tom Thibodeau knows that because that's how he finishes games. He just has to get it through his head that that's how he should be starting games.
Yeah, it's very reminiscent of there's a couple moments I can think of in recent memory under the Knicks with Tibbs. For example, being forced by Jericho Sims getting injured to finally just start Isaiah Hartenstein and put your best player on the floor to start the games after Mitchell Robinson got hurt. It doesn't seem like rocket science to me to do that. And yet the Knicks were throwing out a lineup with Jericho Sims starting that honestly just was not gelling that well together and was not working because Sims, you're putting him with a less good defensive unit that was requiring a lot of help from Mitchell Robinson. And he himself is not that great on defense. And Tibbs was still, though, just like, yeah, but Hartenstein plays better with the bench. So he's got to come in with the bench. And it just made zero sense. And then it boggles the mind that he's this reluctant to play Quickley with Brunson, like at least to start games, considering he spent so much time with, he recognized early on in 2020 to 21 that Derrick Rose and Immanuel Quickley were a really great combo, and that Quickley could play off ball, but also bring the ball up a little bit. This is back in the is Quickley a point guard era, obviously, which now I think we can definitively say, like, yeah, he 100% is. He just is more than that. He's a combo guard in the truest sense of the word. And but he would go to that lineup consistently. And granted, that was his dynamic duo off the bench, but he at least acknowledged that those two played really well together and tried to get them as much time on the floor together as possible. It just seems like with the Brunson and Quickley thing, it's like he's begrudgingly giving them X number of minutes, even though Tibbs loves to cite like, oh, the net ratings and this, that, the other. It's those times where you look at it and you say, like, are you even looking at the net ratings? Because if you were, you would see that these two guys have like probably the best net rating of any two-man unit on your team and of most teams in the NBA. And yet you're going to it as little as possible. It doesn't make any sense, So I'm totally with you, dude. Like, this game was kind of proof positive too of like, if you don't start good, you put yourself in a position to not end good. Like if you come out there and you're kind of flat and you get torched by, a really good young team like the Thunder, chances are like that team is hungry and they're good and they're one of the best teams in the NBA right now. Like they're not going to let you back. So you can't come out there soft right away. You can't come out with anything but your best lineup. So even if they ultimately kept RJ out there, which maybe would not be my favorite move, like at least moving Quickley into the starting lineup, I feel like has to happen. But there is a world where I could see, like what you said, moving Josh Hart in the starting lineup too. Like just say screw it, screw egos, screw contracts. Let's just do what's best for basketball, and then allow DiVincenzo and RJ and Grimes to come off the bench and become the new synergized bench unit. There's a chance where that would maybe work for all parties involved. It would just be a matter of like, is everyone willing to put aside their pride? And that starts with Tibbs with his pride first off.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think Josh Hart is essential to making that work because his energy, his versatility defensively, and we saw especially tonight against the team that like if teams try to go small against the Knicks, like Hart can feast. Like he can hold his own on defense, and those are the types of teams like he's gonna have those coast to coast forays against. Like it's a little bit harder against the Bucks with all their size, all their athleticism. The Thunder, like that's totally plausible. And he did that over and over again tonight, whether he was scoring, whether he was assisting. Like it was a really solid effort from him. And I think he rounds out that duo of Quickley and Brunson really nicely. And you have real size and real physicality with Randle and Hartenstein at the big spots. I don't know about you, Alex. I think that's pretty much all I have to say on this game, that in some ways was a miserable experience, in some ways a tantalizing experience, but I think it showed, again, against a legit top 5 team in basketball, what the Knicks can be and what the Knicks can do even without Mitchell Robinson if they just get their best lineups out there.
Yep, I'm totally with you. I don't have too much more to say either. I think it's just a matter of there's got to be some better adjustments made. The Knicks, we said after the Christmas game, like, statement win. They finally broke through. They finally beat one of the best teams in the league, but now they figure out how to do that consistently if they want to find that next gear. And again, like you just said, it's going to be hard to totally find what your best self can be if you're not doing it with one of your best players missing, which, like, whatever people want to say about Mitchell, oh, you can't, he's a 0 on offense, blah, blah, blah. Like, he was one of the most important players on this team for the time that he was on the floor this year. And he's like sorely, sorely missed right now. So it's tough to totally say like they're going to be able to find the best version of themselves this year and become a true like contender-esque team this year. But if they want to continue at least being in the ball game, they got to start finding the ways to put the best players and the best combinations that they have out there as much as possible. And I think that's a failure on Tibbs right now to do that. And we saw that in this game where the times when the the times when the best combinations were out there, they played better. And the times when they weren't was when they fell apart and ultimately lost the game at the beginning and at the end. So anyway, we'll be back with more great content for you guys. We're probably going to do a double recap on Monday, where we're going to break down the 2 games over the weekend. I think we're going to do New Year's resolutions early in that case. So we're going to release New Year's resolutions before the new year, just because the way that the games are staggered, it would make it kind of difficult for us to do it anytime other than that before the end of the year. So we're going to release that on Friday for you guys. And we'll have plenty of great stuff coming up next week and beyond, of course, here for you guys 5 days a week. So thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace out, everybody.